It's 7 o'clock, time for our regularly scheduled council meeting. Mike, will you call the roll, please?
Collier-Wise.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Holland. Here. Humphrey.
Here.
Mines.
Here.
Price.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Ward. Here. Mayor Powell. Here. Student Representative Paulson.
Here.
Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have minutes from May 15th regular meeting and May 15th special session, and also May 30th special meeting. Motion is second to approve the 3 sets of meetings. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4, adoption of the agenda. Mike or John, any additions or corrections to the agenda? Motion is second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Under visitors to be heard, addressing the council, persons addressing the council shall use the microphone at the podium. Please raise your hand to be recognized, go to the podium, and state your name and address. For items that are not on the agenda, members of the public may speak under visitors to be heard on any topic not on the agenda. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes and no decision will be made at this time. For agenda items, public testimony will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item. Public testimony will then be closed and the topic will be given to the governing body for possible action. At this point, only city council members and staff may discuss the current agenda item unless a council member moves to allow another person to speak and there is unanimous consent from the council. Questions from council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the presiding officer at any time. Is there anyone in the audience that has an item they'd like to bring forward at this time that's not on the current agenda? Anyone, an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, council members, any council member have any item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearings. Item 6A, special permit to exceed permissible sound levels by no more than 50% for the South Dakota Shakespeare Festival, June 6 to 10, 2017, from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., and June 11, 2017, from 3:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the French Park Van Shell Amphitheater for Shakespeare Festival performance. And Mike, please.
Scott Molman, on behalf of the South Dakota Shakespeare Festival, has made application for the special permit to exceed allowable sound levels for the Shakespeare Festival on the date stated. And included in your packet is the notice of the hearing along with the diagram that shows where the band shells serve as the stage. Sound levels will be projecting out from that and reducing as they move away from the area. The request is from June 6th to the 11th, while the actual event is June 8th to the 11th. Performances, there will be rehearsals that will be testing the sound equipment during the rehearsal days. The event's been held in previous years without any issues being raised from that. Administration would recommend issuing the special permit unless information is presented to indicate whether there be a problem with the noise.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic at this point? Seeing none, turn to the council. Second. Motion is second to approve the special permit. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, old business. Item A, second reading of ordinance 1354 to amend Title 15 land usage, Chapter 155 zoning regulations, Section 155.072 off-street parking, Part B, Table 1, to amend the minimum parking requirements for rooming and boarding houses, sororities, and fraternities. Jose, please.
Thank you. The city has been working with the Alpha Psi Delta Corporation Board on the construction of their new house at 214 North Plum since 2015. Through this time that we've been conversing with them, it was quickly we quickly found out that the limiting factor would be parking, the parking requirements that the city had at the time. In 2016, the zoning ordinance was amended by moving the Greek housing to the from permitted uses to conditional use. This change would have essentially allowed the Planning Commission the opportunity to work with the applicant and allow off-street parking on different lots. Also, the number of the required parking at the time with the current ordinance would not change, so it would remain the same as far as whatever is required, just the location would be different. The current or the proposed change to the ordinance right now would essentially be requiring that the applicant provide at the very least enough parking so that the on-street parking situation is not made any worse by the construction, by any new construction. This amendment was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their May 8th meeting. At this meeting, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amendment. A public hearing was held by the City Council for this item on May 15th. Several proponents of the ordinance were present at the meeting. The City Council approved the first reading of the ordinance at their May 15th meeting. The city's cost will be publication of the ordinance once it's hopefully approved. Administration recommends adoption of the ordinance 1354 to amend the minimum parking requirements for rooming and boarding houses, sororities, and fraternities. This being the second reading, a roll call is required by the council.
Thank you, Jose. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this topic at this time?
I can answer questions if needed, please.
Thank you. Council? Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. Can you distinguish this, is it by the wording in the ordinance, from apartment complexes that someday may also ask for a change like this for their parking? Does just the wording in the ordinance set this apart from fourplexes and eightplexes and other
Yes,
apartments?
the ordinance itself actually distinguishes between sororities and fraternities and any other use already mentioned in the ordinance, as opposed to fourplexes and multifamily dwellings.
Okay.
That distinction's already made.
And do we have boarding houses anymore?
Not that I know of. As far as I know, I don't think there's any boarding houses in Vermillion at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other council questions, comments? Motion and a second to approve the second reading of ordinance 1354. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, I'm sorry.
Roll call.
He just said roll call. If you'd please set the machinery up for us for roll call. I thought it did too. You can see the results, 7 yes, 0 no, motion passes. Thank you. Item B, second reading of ordinance 1355 to amend Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 155 Zoning Regulations, Section 155.075A, Telecommunication Tower, Antenna Support Structures, and Wireless Communication Facilities, to add an exception allowing the City Council to consider the construction of stealth camouflage towers within 300 feet of residential zoning or uses. Again, Jose, please.
Thank you. Shortly after the removal of the old water tower located at the intersection of Bloomingdale and Market Streets, the city started receiving requests from cell tower contractors to allow for the construction of a cell tower at this location. The former water tower had cell company equipment located on it. City staff met with one of the contractors requesting a tower and discussed the possibility of constructing a cell tower at this location. The City Council held the first reading of the ordinance on May 15, 2017. At that meeting, no audience comments were offered in opposition to the proposed ordinance. However, concerns were expressed by a City Council member with regards to the proximity of one potential location to a residential historic district and possible health effects caused by telecommunication towers. The existing zoning ordinance does not allow for telecommunication cell towers to be constructed within 300 feet of a residential zone or use. Telecommunication towers are only allowed on property zoned central business, general industrial, or heavy industrial. The proposed zoning districts, which would allow for the construction of telecommunication tower, are not proposed to change. The cell tower contractor suggested that the city amend the current zoning ordinance to allow The construction of stealth camouflage towers or stealth camouflage towers are constructed to look as something else, for example, an evergreen tree, water tower, flagpole, etc., within 300 feet of residential zones or uses. The City Council at the noon meeting on Friday 6 requested the Policies and Procedures Committee to review the company's requests and report back. The Policy and Procedures Committee met with a cell tower representative and directed staff to draft an ordinance that provides for an exception to the current zoning ordinance requirements for discussion and consideration. For discussion purposes, in addition, additional background to more fully consider the options, city staff also developed a draft application that might be used if the ordinance is adopted. The proposed amendment establishes a process to notify neighbors of a hearing. The hearing would be for the City Council to consider and approve a specific design for a location. After approval of a specific design, the applicant would still need to obtain a conditional use permit from the Planning Commission as it's required for the placement of any telecommunications tower. On April 17th, the City Council received the report of the Policies and Procedures Committee and recommended acceptance. As the proposed language would amend the zoning code, an ordinance to amend the zoning code first went to the Planning Commission for discussion. The Planning Commission reviewed the item during their May 8th meeting. At that meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval with a 5-2 vote. Some members of the Planning Commission were concerned that the Planning Commission would be obligated to grant a conditional use permit after the City Council had approved the exception to the distance by approving a specific design. Some neighbors of the Market and Bloomingdale property attended the Planning Commission meeting and expressed concern about telecommunications tower at this location. The proposed ordinance would apply to all central business, general industrial, and heavy industrial zone land in the city, and not just a single property. Every location within 300 feet of residential zoning or uses may not be feasible. The proposed ordinance will provide the City Council and community the opportunity to make an exception in a location that makes sense and where the right design can be determined. The proposed ordinance does not approve a design or location for any specific telecommunication tower. City's cost would be publication of the ordinance. Administration recommends adoption of the second reading of Ordinance 1355 to add the exception allowing the City Council to consider the construction of stealth camouflage towers within 300 feet of residential zoning and uses. A roll call is required due to this being the second reading.
Thank you, Jose. This is an open meeting for the public. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on this? Yes, please. Give your name and address.
Steve Bell, 117 Court Street. 124 feet from my back door to the proposed location of the tower. Thank you, Mayor, Council, citizens of Vermillion. I have some thoughts on the matter that will best be expressed by my just reading them. They're my thoughts, but they're thoughts that you would do well to consider in making your decision on this second reading. That being said, I'll just read them. What specific element drove the engineering decision to propose the Bloomingdale site location for the tower? Specific element for that location. Is the Bloomingdale site considered the absolute best location from a strictly electromagnetic radiation transmission engineering principle? Have other bluff sites been considered? Are there engineering reports available right now on such potential sites? Has a lower Vermillion site been considered, such as the sewage treatment plant? We are aware of regulations in regard to the distance from the airport. The proposed tower location falls within that airport distance zone. How would that differ from a sewage treatment plant location? On a little different note, is the Bloomingdale site considered the most economical cell tower construction site? If not, what specific site that you have considered is the most economical to construct upon? Is there a report available on that matter right now? How many existing cell transmission towers currently exist within the city limits of Vermillion? Specifically, about the principle of what specific city zone locations are they in? Are they near R2 zones or R1? How far exactly are each of these towers from their respective nearest residential homes? That would bear upon your decision. Have all city council members been advised about the relative principles of electromagnetic radiation, specifically about the principle of proportional power dissipation over distance, or more to the point, power strength increase as one nears the tower? So as we talk about 300 feet, if we talk about 150 feet, that does not mean that twice the power will be radiated to that area. It's a proportional effect. It's a much higher radiation effect the closer you move to a tower. Has the council been advised that it is a proven fact that there are no health or biological effects from cell band radiation? Has the council been advised that facts exist that there are health and biological effects from cell band radiation? What liabilities might fall upon the city for any such future negative cell band radiation effects? And lastly, has the council been advised that the cell tower infrastructure buildings have an objectionable noise component? I know for a fact, for I work upon such infrastructure, and they have a noise component. Has the council been advised by the engineering firm of such noise? Does the firm proposing the site have any available data right now as to decibel statistics for the equipment they intend to install? That's it. Just good questions that pertain to our quality of life in our neighborhood on the decision that you're going to make.
Thank you.
Jay, could I make a point of relevancy?
Certainly.
Okay. I want everyone to know that the ordinance we are considering does not propose a particular site. And almost all of your questions were geared toward a specific site. And I don't want you to come away thinking that this ordinance does anything specific. Is it okay if he responds? Well, I guess my point is that when other people speak to the fact of the ordinance. That's all we are really not proposing anything in a particular area. And I understand that there are concerns about a particular area, but this ordinance does not propose a particular site, right? Okay.
Yes, please.
Because it's a little difficult to hear, the proposed ordinance change is to allow anything within the 300 feet, correct? Possibly, or to at least...
It would, but you're right in saying that, but it would only be within certain zone districts. So it would have to be within the commercial, the general business, downtown area, and then the industrial sites. So just because you're within 300 feet of a tower, I can't put it in the residential area or anything like that. It still has to be within the business or industrial site.
Right. But in many cases,
Phyllis, would you give your name and address?
Oh, excuse me. It's Phyllis Packard, 22 West Bloomingdale.
Thank you.
And basically, some of the issues that I have seen due to this ordinance, for one, it's potentially setting a precedent for anywhere in town, as long as it's near a...
That's not accurate. He just explained which zones.
I said if it, I hadn't finished my sentence of it's next to a commercial zone, such as the Bloomingdale is next to a commercial zone. When cell towers are located, or even the stealth towers are located within, less than that 300 distance from residential areas, It has been shown that residential properties can go down anywhere from 10% to 50%. I realize that the Telecommunications Act of 1996 disallows any health consideration on cell phones, so I won't even touch that one. But let's see, and a lot of mine are directly related to, the other one was some sort of agreement on road care and alley care, because within residential and commercial, the streets will get excess wear. Who's paying for that? The other is, once they're done, will the city be responsible for the disposal or taking down of a cell tower, or does a cell tower company have that? Consider that in future. With basically looking at it, residential, I've got to read it. When one lives in a residential neighborhood, there is an expectation of same use and safety and protections from commercial enterprise on some level. In Vermillion zoning, it is my understanding on this particular issue that a 300-foot distance is currently required in order to even consider a cell tower near a residential district, and residents must agree to the installation. I agree and understand that cell towers have become part of our reality and are desired and needed. I just do not agree that they should be any closer than the current rules allow. Basically, thank you.
Would you provide at your convenience that study that shows a 50% drop in house property values? I
thought I sent that to each council member.
The specific article that says 50% drop.
Okay. It was attached, but I can send it again.
Okay, thank you.
The other...
50%. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. Next. Please.
All right. Hi, Sharon Gray, and I live at 32 East Bloomingdale Street. And first, I want to thank everybody, thank all of you for the work you've put into this and the responses that we've gotten from a few of you to our emails. It's a little hard to not refer to the Bluff District, Historic District, when my understanding is the water tower area was one of the ones that's being considered. So clarify for me, is that still potentially a spot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's what I need to know. My first point, I'm sure all of you know, but the audience may not be aware, that the FCC prohibits any community from resisting a cell tower on the grounds of health issues. They have determined that they are not unhealthy, and therefore we can't say that we don't want them because we fear that they're unhealthy. So, that being said, I'll tip my hand and let you know that I don't agree with that. I agree with Steve that I think there is some danger to electromagnetic within a close area. But thank goodness they leave us the opportunity to resist them on aesthetic grounds. So, with that being said, I do appreciate the effort to possibly have an imitation water tower as a stealth tower. But it would be an imitation. And we've gotten over the fact that we've lost the water tower. We'll let that go. I would prefer, if we're going to put anything there, to put a historic park. Maybe a horseshoe grounds, maybe hopscotch, maybe a park table, something simple. Doesn't even have to be fancy, but stick with the historic nature of the district and put a park in there if we could. But the whole reason that they are trying to get a stealth tower in is because they're trying to say, we'll make something that looks acceptable. And I would like to propose that no cell tower is going to look acceptable in an historic district. Even though I appreciate the effort, I personally would not consider that a go. And let's see, a couple other things I wanted to mention. My cell service is fine. I have a cell phone that gets perfectly fine service in that area. Below the bluff is a problem. I will acknowledge that I sometimes lose connection down there. And so I love the idea of maybe putting one out at the water treatment plant or out there by the dog pound or something like that. Water treatment plant, I don't mean the water treatment plant, I mean the water treatment area down there. Yeah, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Right, exactly. I think that's pretty much all of my points. I do want to point out, I know that somebody else may bring it up, but we have a lot of signatures from our little neighborhood saying, please don't put that in our backyard. So I appreciate your opportunity, or my opportunity to speak to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Okay. My name is Holly Straub. I live at 104 Court Street. And before I forget, because this was not something I was planning to say, but someone reminded me, there is a resident in the Bluff Historic District as I understand it, has offered to purchase playground equipment to put on that site if it were to be converted into a little park. But what I really intended to express is some of my concerns about the exception being considered at this point in time, because as I understand, it's an exception that isn't specific to this location. However, it is motivated by at least one cell provider being interested in putting a tower at this particular location. And because of that, I think it's highly likely that in the future, those would be the types of bids that the City Council would be potentially entertaining. And I think if we open the door to allowing an exception, it's almost implying that there's reason to believe that they may have the opportunity to work towards something like this, which I think would be particularly unfortunate given the amount of resistance that there would be in this particular residential area to the idea of having a cell tower there. This particular location is adjacent to what's sometimes referred to as the Bluff Historic District. That was a designation made within the last year. Achieving that designation involved efforts from the Clay County Historic Preservation Commission, State Historic Preservation Office, as well as the National Park Service, because it is in fact a federal designation. In addition to that, I don't recall exactly when it occurred, and it's probably longer ago than I remember because I'm getting old and things seem to have happened recently when in fact it may have been quite a while ago. But I do recall that previously, what I'll refer to as our neighborhood, the Bluff Historic District, it was zoned R2, and then it was rezoned to R1. That was, as I understand it, a city effort, or at least a city activity, as opposed to a county or state or national sort of thing. But what I think is important is the designation as a national historic district, as well as the designation as R1 rather than R2, really represents efforts on the part of multiple entities to essentially enhance the residential character and the residential integrity of that particular neighborhood. And I really feel strongly that the idea of entertaining the possibility of putting a cell tower or any type of a replica feature in such close proximity to a historic district is really not in the best interest of the neighborhood and the community. And I also think that it sets a precedent for this type of thing happening in other areas in town. I understand that there's only certain areas that this particular zoning change would impact, but I really hate to see the door opened in that regard. In part, it's one of those things that sometimes with technological advances, we're pretty quick to embrace things and then come to find out a little bit later that maybe we should have slowed down a little bit. And I just think this is one of those instances where rather than going ahead and making an exception, maybe sit tight a little bit longer until it seems a little bit more plausible to be moving forward with more support of individuals in the community, particularly those that would be most directly impacted.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, turn it to the council for deliberation. Comments, questions? Tom?
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Tom's. Yours is lit, Tom.
Whoever pushes the button first. Yeah, I think we have a question out there, though.
I asked for any other questions, and nobody responded, so I turned it to the council.
One question.
Shall we, well, wait a minute, we have to have approval from the entire council.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Nancy Bell, 117 Court Street. Do you want it in your backyard? Think about it. That's it.
Is that a question to me or to?
To everybody. Do you want it in your backyard?
You know, a comment was made that property values would be enhanced or deleted down by up to 50%. There was a lot of concern when we took down the water tower. There was a lot of interest in keeping the water tower for whatever reason, I don't know. But when we took it down, did property values go up?
No.
Then why would something of lesser footprint necessarily cause them to go down? And Phyllis's 50%, I'm not sure that was talking about cell towers or towers of a general nature, so we'd have to have more information on that.
The water tower was historical. This is not. That's
Yes.
the question. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to the council and Tom. Rich?
Well, let's see, first of all, I was on the policy committee, we reviewed it with the, was his title engineer, John, the gentleman from Verizon?
I'd have to look it up.
Anyway, he was not an engineer. Okay, and we talked at length about what it meant. First of all, the 300 feet, we have to understand, is an arbitrary number selected as a city block. It's no number that they set up. So our concern, of course, was the safety factor first. Is it going to fall on something? And that would resolve, and it's not going to be an issue at all. It has a much smaller falling radius. Then, of course, the other thing was, what effect would it have? It will not improve your cell phone usage whatsoever because you're already in a good zone. It goes out and extends beyond that to the lower area. And I asked him at one time what the radiation was, and it's well below the state and federal limits, but he didn't give a number, and I'd like to see that number. The other thing that was not addressed, and did not ask, is there a noise factor? I assumed there was not, so I didn't ask that question. I would like to ask him, but he's not available. Furthermore, traffic. I have not seen heavy traffic at any of the towers we now have, so I would not expect that, but it's a valid question to ask. Is there going to be traffic and so forth? So I think we should. Would I want one in my backyard? I had one in my backyard in California. There are palm trees all over the place, and you can't tell which is a palm tree and which is, in fact, a phone tower. So does that bother me? No, not at all. We're talking radiation that goes, first of all, not straight down, but out. Second of all, much below any federal requirements. I would appreciate if the gentleman gave me an exact number. I don't know that right now, and we will ask him. In fact, you've brought some valid questions I'd like to ask him about the noise, about the traffic. But as far as safety is concerned, as far as when it's done, if it is done in that area or any other area, it'll look like a water tower. I have been requested by several people to make sure it not only looked like a water tower, but would in fact be comforting to turkey buzzards, which I'm sure you guys would really love to have. But I know that. It's sort of like, I like mulberries, but I don't want one of those trees in my yard at all. So I would like to say, I'd like to get some more information from Verizon before we made any final decisions about what things you've brought up that are of interest.
Jose, did you have some comment? Okay. Someone else in the council? Tom?
I appreciate that this proposal is definitely provides more hoops for people to have to go through if they want the exception to the existing ordinance that allows for 300 feet. If this passes, at least we have that. is the kind of the way I look at it. I like hearing from residents. I like it when people show up at a city council meeting, because quite often that doesn't happen. So it's good to get feedback and hear the discussion. And I think there are good points on both sides of this issue. I think it's well thought through. Yes, there are smaller zones of falling, because safety was one of my major concerns at first. 300 feet is a city block, basically, it used to be, and that helped protect areas in case of a falling tower, which I've seen in my radio days, but this is different, I understand. I'm interested in hearing more about the ideas for a potential playground for people who are in the downtown area shopping and have a place to go rest, take their kids, next to one of the most commercial areas in Vermillion. Market Street's named Market Street for a reason. But right across the street is a historic district, and there are neighbors. When we hear from our own citizens to hesitate before we do something instead of jump when Verizon speaks, it gives me pause. Finally, I'm perfectly comfortable with the ordinance the way it is, and I'm going to vote no.
Other members of the council? Steve?
I guess I wanted to talk to the group gathered just to kind of give them the background of why I supported this ordinance out of the Policies and Procedures Committee. Verizon came to us and let us know that there was a demand on their cell towers that in time would not be met. And so they felt like they needed another cell tower. And so they certainly had the old water tower location in mind. And when we first entered the Policies and Procedures Committee and were notified that there were these stealth towers, and one of them was a water tower design, you know, many of us were like, oh, this is great. You know, we can satisfy the needs of the neighbors who didn't want to see the tower go down, and we can satisfy a utility need in the community. And so that certainly was, it seemed to me like a win-win proposition going out of committee and having our committee recommended to the council. Your opposition to this, you know, gives me pause that maybe this isn't the best location, but it doesn't give me pause necessarily on the ordinance. It's the change in the ordinance itself, because I think it does give us some flexibility for locations in the town of Vermillion that might serve the most people. And we know that we need more cell tower data to serve the needs of not only our college community, but the greater Vermillion community. So that's a responsibility we have as a city council, is to meet that need. And this ordinance does not declare one location, but it does give the councils and it provides a lengthy sort of procedure to make sure that there is neighborhood acceptance, and you know, and we have to approve it, and the commission has to approve it before it would go through. So before any location would go through. So there would be quite a lengthy process to make sure that that's amenable to the majority of citizens where a tower would be built. So I'm going to support it, but I am not I'm not going to go on record saying I want it in a particular area. And so I hope you will not see my vote as a vote for a particular, putting this in a particular area, but I do think in the long run it gives the city some flexibility to place towers advantageously for the citizens and not have them be aesthetically displeasing.
Thank you, Steve. Kelsey?
So I do want to make sure that we focus on the ordinance at hand, and I think there are a lot of good questions that have come up, and I think they're questions that need to be considered seriously, especially if right now we don't have an application, correct? So we don't have an application to even really consider. We don't know what they're asking for. We don't know where. We don't know what the design is. There are things that they've talked about and they've mentioned, but we don't have one in front of us, and so it's difficult to discuss that. And I would hope that those questions were an application to go in front of the Planning Commission would need to be answered before they would approve a site. And the questions about the design would certainly have to be answered by the council before we would approve it. I'm just wondering if the questions that came up tonight are questions that apply to the ordinance. If we need more information from Verizon, who was not able to be here tonight, about the specific elements of the ordinance. And I'm not totally sure. I feel like a lot of the questions really are very site-specific. I haven't seen anything that necessarily talks about the difference in property values or different things between, say, 300 and 200 feet. That specific difference, we don't really have that information. So I think, I would be open to the idea of waiting to vote until we had a chance to get all of our questions answered by a Verizon representative, but I don't know if that's necessary. And I'd be interested if other people felt like it would be better to wait or to vote tonight.
Anyone else have a comment on this side? Yes, please.
I want to thank all the residents who came out to speak today and echo Councilman Sorensen's appreciation, and also the people that I've communicated with in the past couple of weeks. That's been very helpful for me in thinking more thoroughly about this decision. There's a lot of what-ifs that revolve around specific sites and what a tower might look like and how it would affect the area. But I think that the question that remains for me mostly is the need for the tower and the potential negatives of not having one. Currently that discussion has been pretty vague in that, well, it seems like we need more coverage, right? But I don't really know how much and in what locations, and if a tower here would cover all of them, or a tower over here would cover most of them, or if there are other options that are maybe less ideal that would fit more easily into our current zoning areas that Verizon just hasn't considered because they're less optimal, and any negative impacts that this would have long-term in not putting a tower along the bluff. So I feel like these are questions that I'd really like to get answered by Verizon before we do consider whether it's really necessary to have an exception, or if there are other feasible options. And in general, I'm not in favor of measures that infringe on residential districts, but if the city and impacted neighborhood could reach a reasonable, practical workaround that significantly benefits the population at large, I might consider it. Without a more solid understanding of the larger benefits of this project, I would have to vote no on this issue tonight. But since the representative from Verizon is unavailable tonight, I would move to table this item until the next meeting, or until the next meeting that the representative could attend and could offer a more thorough overview of the options and benefits to the city.
Before, is that a motion?
That's a motion, sorry. It's a big motion, but I would move to table.
Jim, does that require a second? Yes. Before somebody makes a second, I'd like to know if anyone else in the council wants to go on that before a second meeting. Does anybody else want to say anything?
I would basically concur with pretty much everybody that spoke already, and thank you all for coming out. And I think as a council, we need to do our due diligence and think through the questions that were brought forward. I don't see that we're up against a time restraint, So why not table it and just take it back and really think through all those questions and get some answers and make a sensible decision later?
Is that a second?
I just want to state that, in my feeling, the noise issue and the traffic issue is not site-specific. If it's always noisy, if there's always traffic, that needs to be considered considerably. So once again, I think we should talk with Verizon first to find out that. And when we have that, we can ask other questions. I'm sure they've done a pretty thorough engineering research about what would be optimal. But maybe second place, wherever it is really close to that one. It'd be nice to know. We can ask that. So I'd like to, can I now second?
Sure. Can I speak?
Mayor?
You want to withdraw your second for a minute?
Okay, yes.
And everybody else is, all the others second.
Thank you, Councilman. I just wanted to reiterate that there are options, and yes, thank you for coming here. It's refreshing to see live bodies in the council chamber. It's great. The options needed to be studied. Again, I mentioned the playground, but there's also the rezoning of residential areas. I think if this were proposed for somewhere else, there'd be just a whole different set of residents here, perhaps saying the same things. I don't know. So again, here we are without even an application, looking at changing an ordinance without even having an application. So I'm all for the motion, and if Mr. Holland wants to second it, that's fine, or I will.
I would just comment that they couldn't apply till there wasn't, or there isn't. So that's kind of... Anyway, we have a second now?
Do we need to do a roll call, or is this a new
I
motion?
don't think so, do we, Jim? Not on a motion to table. Is it specific time or next council?
I just said until he can be here.
Okay. John?
When I was visiting with Mr. Walter, trying to see if he could make this meeting, and he couldn't, I put him on the spot and said, would you be at June 19th? And he said he could make that one. So that's the next city council meeting.
And I think Mike is a good stenographer and has all the questions that people have asked that we can ask Verizon to get responses for us for them. I might also note that the 300, we did some research on why 300 feet, and it sounds like somebody said, oh, 300 sounds about right, because we've found some other cities where it's 200 or where it's 200% of the length of the tower or some such thing as that. So 300 is not necessarily a state or federal type of thing. But I'm all for us getting answers to the questions that you people have raised tonight. And again, thank you very much. Now, do we just have a simple vote on that? Okay. We have a motion to second to table till the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for attending. Item C, a second reading of Ordinance 1356 to amend Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 155, Zoning Regulations, Section 155.008, Definitions, B, to amend the definition of agribusiness. And Jose, please.
Thank you. On March 27th, the Planning Commission recommended zoning amendment to the City Council that would have allowed agribusiness uses within the industrial zoning districts as a conditional use. A public hearing to discuss the item with the City Council was scheduled for April 17th. At that meeting, the City Council tabled the item and asked staff to better define agribusiness to ensure that the uses are as intended and not abused. The existing definition for agribusiness would have allowed a wide interpretation of the term farming and large-scale business operation. The modifications done to the definition by staff and city attorney only allow farms that produce, process, and distribute agriculture products. and a farm is defined already by the city code as a parcel of land of at least 10 acres in size. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the amended definition of agribusiness definition at their May 8th meeting. The City Council approved the first reading of the ordinance 1356 with the amended definition of agribusiness at their May 15th meeting. City's cost at this point would be the publishing of the ordinance. Administration recommends approval of the ordinance 1356, amending the definition of agribusiness. A roll call is required due to this being the second reading.
Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this topic? Seeing none, council? Mr. Mayor.
I think whether we can call this a friendly amendment or a consensus or however you want to handle it, it would be wise to add in the last paragraph that's on the back page of Ordinance 1356, where it says agribusiness, after the words agriculture products, and there's a semicolon, perhaps insert or entities engaged in would cover that a little better. I think council agrees. Jim?
The way it reads right now, it says farms engaged in the production, processing, and distribution of agriculture products or the manufacture of farm machinery. Well, farms are not going to be engaged in the manufacture of farm machinery. I think Tom's right. It should say entities engaged in, as it does then after the or later on in the ordinance.
Right. Can this be a friendly amendment, or do we have to go back?
It doesn't, I don't think it changes what the intent of it was. It just clarifies.
Since this is second reading.
Since it's a second reading, it's still okay to make that change. Okay? Did we have
It doesn't materially change it.
You made the motion to approve as amended?
As amended, yes.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance as amended. All in favor signify by, I should ask, is there any further discussion? Yes. I've got one more chance on that.
Now we set the machine up for roll call. Must be neat.
Yours didn't go.
It shows yes, 8. Make it 9, please. And the light went off. Yeah, I do have one more chance. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. All right. Item D, second reading of ordinance 1353 to amend Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 155 Zoning Regulations to add the conditional use and applicable standards of an agribusiness for GI General Industrial and HI Heavy Industrial Districts. And Jose, please.
In late 2016, city staff performed a review of the city's zoning ordinance to ensure that the defined uses in the document were also included in the text for the zoning districts. One of the terms found in the definition section was not listed as a use in the zoning districts was agribusiness. Because of the economy of the area surrounding Vermillion, it's predominantly agricultural. It was deemed prudent at the time to include this use within the text of for our zoning districts. The city's planning commission reviewed the ordinance at hand at their March 27th meeting. At that meeting, the planning commission expressed concerns with allowing all forms of agribusiness within city limits. The commission unanimously recommended considering the uses on a conditional use basis. This item was brought up to the City Council at the April 17th meeting. At that meeting, the City Council tabled the item and asked staff to better define the agribusiness to ensure that the uses in the area are intended and not abused. Public hearing was held for the first reading of Ordinance 1353. Was approved at the May 15th Council meeting. Due to the type of uses possibly associated with agribusiness, it seems fitting to group these uses within the general industrial and the heavy industrial districts. These districts currently contain some uses associated with agriculture, such as farm store, feed store, farm implements, stockyards, rendering, etc. However, none of the uses currently included within these districts directly deal with agribusiness. The proposed amendment to the ordinance would allow agribusiness to be agribusiness use within the GI and the HI districts The change would require the agribusiness use to require a conditional use permit. This is because the proposed use could be more industrial in nature than the surrounding uses. The only cost associated with this ordinance at the time would be advertising for the public hearing, the publication of the ordinance. Administration recommends adoption of the second reading of ordinance 1353. A roll call is required.
Oh, gotcha.
This is the second reading. This is your last chance.
Oh, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this item? Seeing none, council?
Second.
A motion and a second. Don, would you set up for a roll call vote, please? It worked. 9 yes, 0 no. Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Jose. New business. Item A, resolution concurring with the boundaries of Clay County Tax Increment Finance District Number 1, the HICUS Tract Number 2. And John, please.
Thank you. Tax increment financing is a tool that we have used here in the community for a couple different projects, such as the Bluffs Golf Course, Polaris, Mesaba, Vermillion Technology Center, and most recently with Bliss Point. The VCDC and Clay County are collaborating to prepare a TIF district as part of an incentive package for an economic development prospect that we have been working to potentially come to our city and county. There are different types of TIF districts in the state. This is not one that would require the city or the county to issue any bonds. This would be one basically what's sometimes referred to as the property tax rebate. Sometimes the office lingo we might refer to it as, but basically it would create the TIF district and they would be able to have the TIF dollars rebated back to them for qualifying expenditures. This is a little bit unique in that the city can only have up to 5% of our assessed value in a TIF district, and we have approximately $10.2 million of debt with the various projects that we have right now out of a maximum of approximately $22 million. And that number changes all the time. Later this year, we're going to be exercising the DENR loan for the Prentice Street Lift Station project. That debt service also counts towards that, as well as the landfill dozer that we're going to be acquiring here later. That's a grant, some local funds, and then the DER loan. So to help preserve the ability for the city to have additional debt capacity in the future, the VCDC and Clay County got together and felt that this might be easiest to go through Clay County. As it is a TIF district established by Clay County that entirely resides within the city limits of Vermillion, the City Council is asked to concur with those boundaries. And I believe we put a map of HICUS Tract 2 up. You can kind of see that hatched or in the top of half of the diagram there. That is HICUS Tract 2 is the area that would be Clay County TIF District Number 1. At this point in time, the Clay County Planning Commission has reviewed the item, and they have made a recommendation to the Clay County Commission to adopt these TIF boundaries, and the City Council is asked to concur with those boundaries, and the Clay County Commission would consider it at their meeting tomorrow morning. The meat of the plan, or what we call the project plan, would follow later this summer if we're able to advance on to the next step in the process.
Thank you, John. Again, anyone in the audience wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, council?
Second.
Motion is second to approve the Clay County TIF District Number 1. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, John. Item B, recommendation from the bid board to amend their 2017 budget to support 2017 South Dakota High School All-Star Football Game and Fireball Run events coordinated by the Vermillion Chamber of Commerce and Development Company. Again, John, please.
Thank you. This is a part of this is very similar to what the City Council considered last year. Last year, the Vermillion Sports Authority was able to get the high school All-Star Football Game moved here to Vermillion, and we had a very successful event last year, and the City Council provided some funding for that event. This year, there are two different events that the bid board at their meeting in May reviewed and took a look at. One is the 2017 South Dakota High School All-Star Football Game, which takes place this coming Saturday, and the other one is the Fireball Run event. I might let Nate better address that one and explain that. Both of those two events would bring some pretty good exposure to our community. And so that's why they did recommend providing up to $12,500 of funding to assist with those two respective events. Last year, when the City Council considered this event, the event, you did consider taking some money out of the bid fund as well as from the bed board and booze fund. So that may be a question that you want to take a look at this year as well. Do you want to take some funding, if you choose to support these events, from those respective funds? Both of those should benefit from the respective activities that will take place. So Nate, do you want to maybe touch on what Fireball Run is a little bit? You can do that better than I can.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment on this item? Nate?
Thank you. Nate Welch from the Vermillion Chamber and Development Company. Just a quick background on the Fireball Run. If anyone has ever seen the television show Amazing Race, to give you a little bit more of a premise for that, Fireball Run is a reality TV show that they stream on Amazon Prime, and it has the same premise of Amazing Race, where they're going to have teams coordinated together and then they travel from one location to another. But in this style of their show, they actually focus on small towns, gems basically, that have really neat, unique experiences and historical experiences, maybe an experience that someone just traveling through might not be able to experience that direct. And what they do is they travel in parts of the country. And so this episode this year, which I believe they're in their 11th season, will start up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, be up in Wisconsin, travel through Minnesota, Iowa, to South Dakota, and then South Dakota will have a stop here in Vermillion, Yankton, Pierre, and then end the show in Rapid City.
Comments or questions for Nate? John, is it within this item that we would decide whether the city BBB is used, or is that at a separate time?
I think we'd prefer to, if you have direction on that, and then actually technically you'll do it with the budget revision ordinance in September.
Okay.
But if you would provide staff with the direction as to, if any, which fund or funds you'd like to have it come from, that'd be helpful for us.
Well, I won't speak for the council, I'll speak for myself. I think it's important for the city to support this in some manner or form, but I'd like the rest of the council to voice their opinion.
Well, like I said, I think I'm happy to know the football event's still considering doing here. Like I said, I did that myself. I know, hard to believe, but I think it's a great event for high school kids, especially, and like I said, it's great for the community. And the fireball scene sounds very interesting, so I am all for it.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
That was a motion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Rich?
I'm sorry to be so ignorant, but I'm trying to figure out what are we talking about as far as money? What are we total? Because I think we should contribute in bid B and B.
Yeah.
I just don't know what number it is.
The total request, the recommendation from the bid board was $12,500, which was the same as what you did last year for the one event, the 2016 game. This is the 2017 game and the Fireball Run events for a total of $12,500.
Still the same number.
Same number. It's just if you want to split it.
I propose we do the same as we did last year.
Okay.
Which is the 2,500 out of.
What was it that we did last year?
2,500.
2,500.
Yeah, 2,500. Yeah.
And they did the 10s?
Yes.
Steve, please.
Is that enough?
I know it's never enough. Nate would never say.
I can give you a pen.
I'm sure you would prefer more. Is 12.5, since we're covering two events instead of one, is that adequate? Or
Well, Fireball Run won't happen until September, so I'll be back here in a couple of weeks if you need me. I do, in all honesty, I really sincerely do appreciate the effort to be able to support that. When we were asked the question in the conversation with the bid board, they had asked that same question to us. And obviously the All-Star football game is coming up in this week, so our budget numbers are coming in extremely accurate to what we were estimating for them. And so when we were asked really what kind of dollars could we support, our answer was $12,500 should give us enough between the All-Star football game as well as some of our expectations for Fireball Run. We haven't been able to finite all of those details, but I am pretty confident that should be able to equal between those two.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Certainly.
Nate, I know last year the high school football game was kind of a spur
kind of a exciting but yet kind of challenging situation for money. Did you guys ever find a sponsor for this year?
Yeah, and actually last year we had a major sponsor. We had a title sponsor, which was Sanford Health was our title sponsor for that, and as well as a number of area businesses. We had just over half a dozen, between 6 to 8 area businesses that contributed in a very good way for us, and also that is where that final contribution allowed us to be able to kind of equal that, or zero net that total budget. For this year, what was exciting was Sanford Health came back and actually gave us a 3-year commitment, which was really great because that kind of longevity allows us to be able to build up a very consistent program in that. And then we've been able to bring in relatively the same amount of sponsors for it this year. But again, that same amount was still a little bit less, so this dollar amount, again, will help us get to that net. We were also able to, with some of the expenses that we did last year, kind of bring down that total amount spent because of that first year to launch it. Takes a little bit more in the promotion. You'll notice I'm sporting last year's very nice t-shirt. You don't have to make a couple more of those purchases as well.
Thanks, Nate.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of quick questions. This $12,500 would be about how much of the total that, with the sponsorships and whatnot?
Sure.
How much total are you getting?
Of the total sponsorship, we're hovering right around, I believe it's $36,000 to $40,000 in total sponsorship between on the All-Star football game for that, if I'm remembering correctly.
Thanks.
And I'm sorry, just to be clear, that does not include that $12,000, $36,000 to $40,000 separate from it.
In addition to the... Okay.
Correct.
And then my other question, Mr. Mayor, is that with the split proposal, again, like we did last year, is we just going to do what we did last year? My question is, wasn't there a motion and a second, and does that amend the motion?
What do you have?
I made the second. I'm sure we can adjust our motions to include that split, correct?
Yeah, I just wondered if that required any formal,
The mover and the second approved $2,500 from the city.
Yeah.
Didn't you?
Sure did.
Didn't you? Okay.
Well, the 2,500 BBB gave 10,000 from the bid.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
That's exactly what we meant.
That's right. Okay. We all knew that. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Nate.
Touchdown.
Thank you.
Does that include new shirts? For the council. Okay. Item C, final plat of Tract 3, Heine's Addition in the southwest quarter of Section 14, T92N, R52W of the 5th Prime Meridian, Clay County, South Dakota. And Jake, city, meet our new assistant city, not attorney.
No,
manager.
I hope I'm not your attorney. You'll be in trouble if that's the case.
A city assistant to the city manager. Jake, welcome to our community. And
thank you.
Have at it.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I really appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you for the first time. I was a little less flattered when I realized I was chosen just so it wouldn't turn into the Jose Variety Hour. But I appreciate the opportunity.
The Jake half hour.
So we have 3 pieces separately here that are all the same procedure for those. This first one is the final plat of Tract 3, Heine's Addition. This one is off South Dakota Highway 19 and Dawson Road. And so how this works is that because it's in the joint jurisdictional zoning area, the plat has to be reviewed by the county's planning commission, who makes a recommendation to you. And so this was reviewed by the County Planning Commission on May 22nd, and they recommended approval to the City Council. The staff has reviewed this, and we recommend approval of this plat.
Thank you. Any comments from the audience in this? Seeing none, Council?
Second.
Motion to second to approve the final plat of Tract 3. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item D, final plat of Heine lots 2 and 3 in the east half of Section 20, T92N, R51W of the 5th Prime Meridian, Clay County, South Dakota. Again, Jake, please.
Alrighty, so same story with this one. This property is on the northwest corner of Burbank Road and 466th Avenue. It does butt the east property line of the Bluffs Golf Course. Same story, the County Planning Commission reviewed this plat at the May 22nd meeting and recommended approval to the City Council, and administration concurs with that.
Thank you. Council?
I have a question.
Steve?
This is the plot of land that is just east of the golf course on top of the hill, right?
Above it.
Oh, it's above and below?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to think of the map?
Oh, got it. So I thought that the city owned that land, and that it was leased, or it was leased to us, or we leased it to others to farm until we decide. Am I wrong on this?
It's on north of 50.
You're close.
That's
You're both
better than I
right.
usually am.
When gentleman's name, when he passed away, yes. When Mr. Mockler passed away, he left ground to the city. The bulk of it is north of 50, on the north side of the 50, but there's also a piece that is south of Highway 50, and it's just a little bit east of this area.
East and south, where the road that goes south to Burbank comes in is on the corner of it, so it is not this land. Yeah.
Got it clarified. Did we have a motion and a second?
No, we don't.
Motion and a second to approve the final plat of Heine lots 2 and 3. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item E, final plat of lots 1 and 2 of Mildred Anderson Tract 1 in the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 20, and in Government Lot 2 of Section 29, and the accretion thereto, all in T92N, R51W of the 5th Prime Meridian, Clay County, South Dakota. Jake, please.
All right, so the Mildred Anderson Tract 1, again, this south and east of the city's golf course off Burbank Road. Same story, the County Planning Commission reviewed this on May 22nd, recommended approval for you to the City Council, and administration also recommends approval of the final plat.
Thank you, Jake. Council? Motion and a second to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Jay. Item F, Solid Waste Department tractor lease with Fred Haar Company. Malachi, please. Student intern, correct?
Yes.
Welcome.
Thanks. So the city has once again been approached by the Fred Haar Company, which is a John Deere dealership out of Yankton, South Dakota, about leasing a tractor with a front end loader for a period of 7 months. Under a program, John Deere, the dealership is able to basically get a discount, governmental discount pricing on tractors and lease them out to government entities for a period of 7 months or 250 hours. So the city would lease a tractor with a front end loader from Fred Haar for 7 months for 250 hours at about $10 an hour, so $2,500. And then additionally, the city would also have to pay for insurance and any routine maintenance cost, which the city estimates to be about $200. So the administration recommends authorizing the city manager to enter into the lease agreement with Fred Haar Company for the lease of the John Deere tractor for a period of 7 months and $2,500 or 250 hours.
We should have some questions for him to initiate him.
Well, I do, but the audience goes first, right?
I don't think the others are interested here.
I understand these. I drove one year for the Conservation District. It's a very good deal. The city shop then do the maintenance as far as you have to change some of the oil after 100 hours, et cetera, et cetera. There's some routine stuff.
Routine maintenance for oil
City
change.
shop can accommodate the tractors then.
Yes.
Or this tractor. It is a very good deal. It's mutually beneficial for whichever John Deere dealer does this, and the government entity, because it helps advertise the tractor. They're brand new in most cases, and so they operate very well. They are air conditioned, I think. At least the one I drove was, and the maintenance is minimal. So
you had air conditioning when you were driving?
Yeah, this was last summer. Oh, yeah, just last summer. Anyway, so It's a good deal, and I move approval.
Motion and second to approve the City of Vermillion landfill tractor lease with Fred Har Company. All in favor signify by... Any questions from the council?
So the financial...
You want to drive it this year?
No. I know,
air
the air conditioning is very tempting. The financial consideration says that unlike previous years, the city would be responsible for $10 an hour.
Correct.
Why is it different from previous years?
Because they didn't charge us anything before.
And they just decided to start?
They thought they had a fish here.
Okay.
Now can we vote? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks, Madam Clerk. Item G, permit for consumption but not sale on Thursday, July 6th from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. for Vermillion Area Farmers Market on the fairgrounds east of High Street and south of Cherry Street. Mike, please.
Grace Freeman, on behalf of the Vermillion Area Farmers Market, has requested a permit for consumption of alcoholic beverages on public property for wine and beer tasting in the farmers market area on the fairgrounds east of High Street and south of Cherry, kind of for a family fun day at the farmers market on Thursday, July 6th from 3 until 7 p.m. A copy of the request is attached. The state statute allows the city council to issue permits for consumption but not sale of alcoholic beverages on public property. This property is actually, it's owned by the city and leased to Clay County, who subleases it to the Clay County Fairgrounds Association. The fairgrounds have indicated they don't have any issues with the consumption on their leased property. A similar event was held last August without any incidents.
Any questions for Mike? Council? Motion and second to approve the permit for consumption but not sale for the Vermillion Area Farmers Market on Thursday, July 6th, 3 to 7, fairgrounds east of High Street, south of Cherry. Any other comments or questions? Catherine? No. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item H, Prentice Plunge change order number 2 with Waffle Construction Company. Derek, please. And Derek is an intern, is that correct, Derek?
Yes.
For the summer?
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So there has been 3 contracts with the construction of the pool at Prentice Park, but tonight we're specifically going to focus on Waffle's contract. On November 7th, 2016, our first change order to the contract was an increase in the contract price by $10,446. Within this new change order, there are 12 different change items. One is an irrigation system installation allowance is being removed. The city is going to complete the turfing and seating, and we are completing the gables on the bathhouse and mechanical building and several others. This change order will decrease Waffle's contract by $34,981. The administration recommends the approval of this change order because it decreases the contract's price by $34,981.
Thank you, Derek. Yep. Comments, questions from the audience?
I just have a question.
Council? Tom?
This decreases the contract price, but is there an increase in what we're paying for the city employees to finish the work, like overtime or anything like that?
Let John speak to that if you don't mind.
No. Mr. Prescott?
No, with respect to that, it's part of the functions that they do. They're making it part of their workday.
It's kind of part of park
They're
maintenance.
filling in to help make these things happen
Okay.
in a timely fashion. Sometimes we have items like this that the contractor bids on but are not within really their bailiwick, and so they're perfectly happy to bid it, but they're also happy to let go of items like that.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions, Council? Motion and second to approve pool change order number 2. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Under item 9, bid openings. A, bid opening for landfill bale bags. And again, Derek, please.
Okay, thank you. So the solid waste department uses bale bags to carry out daily operations. Basically, the baler will bale the trash into a bale and then they put it into a bag. and then it is taken to the landfill cell. It is approximately about 18,000 bale bags we'll be getting, and each bag can hold around 2,800 pounds of waste. Because this material is estimated costs around $60,000, it is required by state law to do a bidding. And we have received 2 bids, one from Accent Packaging for $57,060 and one from Global Packaging Solutions for $59,400. The administration recommends purchasing the bale bags from Accent Packaging for $57,060.
Thank you, Derek. Yep. Council?
Thank you.
Move approval of the low bid.
Motion and second to approve the landfill bale bags bid. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item B, 115 kV double circuit transmission line construction. Shane, please.
Thank you. In August of 2015, the city entered into an agreement with DGR Engineering to perform engineering for a new substation in the northeast part of town on Hikers Track 2, which is north of Mesaba. With that agreement, they also agreed to design the new 115 kV double circuit transmission line to feed the new substation. That route has been now set and easements have been acquired for the route. And in February of 2017, council awarded the contract for the poles for the transmission line. As we speak, the poles are being manufactured and are scheduled to be delivered by no later than August 1st of 2017. On May 25th, staff opened bids for the construction of the new transmission line. We received 13 bids for the construction. Bid summary has been attached for your guys' review. A recommendation letter from DGR has also been attached. Low bid was received from Carey and Peterson Power Line Contracting LLC out of Montevideo, Minnesota, in the amount of $522,590.30. The price is under the engineer's estimate of $730,000. Carey and Peterson has worked for the city in the past on our past transmission lines. Light and Power has budgeted funds to cover these expenses. Recommendation of administration and DGR is to award the contract bid to Carey and Peterson Power Contracting LLC for $522,590.30.
Thank you, Shane. Council? Council? We have a motion second, but we can still discuss.
I'm just curious, do we normally get 13 bids? It seems like...
It's a very high amount of bids, a lot of interest in this project.
And such a wide swing, it's double the price from one to the other.
Yeah.
Is that also...
Yep. It was, when we first started, we were wondering if maybe they've missed a number, but we got a couple more in that same ballpark, so it was good. Good problem to have.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item C, 115 kV Northeast Substation construction. Again, Shane, please.
Thank you. This is right after what we just went through. So now we got the power there. We need to build a substation for it. So through the early months of 2017, council has already awarded multiple bids for different pieces of equipment that will be the centerpieces of the new substation. On May 25th, 2017, staff opened bids for construction of the 115 kV Northeast Substation. We received 14 bids for the construction of the substation. Like the transmission line, bid summary and a recommendation letter have been attached for your guys' review. The low bid was received from Primoris Avinia Incorporated of Johnson, Iowa, in the amount of $1,384,011.85. This was just under $200,000 under the engineer's estimate for the project. DGR has worked with Primoris and other projects, and they, they feel good about their ability to perform this project. Light and Power has funds for this project as well, and administration recommends awarding the construction of the 115 kV Northeast Substation to Primoris Avinia Incorporated of Johnson, Iowa, in the amount of $1,384,011.85.
Thank you, Shane. Council? Motion and second to approve the 115 kV Northeast Substation construction to the low bid. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. You just spent $2 million for us. Yeah. Item D, fuel quotes, Mike.
Should be some, I guess they're on your screens too. The first quote from Stern Oil for unleaded gasoline was $1.92.94 per gallon. Item 2 is unleaded gasoline regular, $2.1559. Item 3 is number 2 diesel fuel dyed, $1.68.31. And number 4, number 2 diesel fuel cleared, $1.98.81. Second bidder was from Brunick Service. Item 1, $1.93. Item 2, $2.18. Item 3, $1.68. And item 4, $2. Stern Oil is low on 1 and 2 and 4. Brunick's is low on 3.
Thank you, Mike. Council? Motion and second to approve the low bids. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, City Manager's Report. John, please.
Thank you. Just a reminder that expression of interest forms for the City Council to review for Planning Commission openings are due this Friday, June 9th. The anticipation is that the City Council will select individuals to serve a 5-year term on the Planning Commission at the next meeting on June 19th. We do have 4 seats which are coming up at this particular junction for appointment. Just a reminder that East Main Street from Plum Street east to Sycamore Street will be closed Thursday, June 8th to Saturday, June 10th from 6:30 to 10 p.m. and then Sunday, June 11th from 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. and that is for the Shakespeare Festival production of Comedy of Errors. That's again this Thursday through Sunday. It's approximately half hour before the production until the production end time. The Planning Commission at their next meeting, which is Monday, June 12th at 5:30, they will consider rezoning, and this rezoning is the west side of Elm Street between Duke Street and Alumni Street. That rezoning request is from general business to R3, as well as the lot, I believe it's Campus Crossing Apartments, which is located at the northeast corner of Alumni Street and Cottage Avenue. That rezoning is from R2 to R3. So that rezoning will be before the Planning Commission next Monday, June 12th. And it's anticipated that that rezoning request would also then advance the City Council at your next meeting on Monday, June 19th. As was kind of, I guess, alluded to a little bit a few moments ago, we did open, I believe the community knows, and we've had great press coverage on it, and I think it's been a little bit, if you will, the talk of the town. Prentice Plunge did open this past Saturday. New to Mr. Ward, I guess. But it is going very well. There are some things that we are working out, and the staff is tweaking those things and getting a sense of how those things take place. For example, what items sell better than other in the concession stand, just little things like that they're doing. But overall, it's going very well. I do want to thank Jim and Ryan, just did an incredible job, as well as the rest of the Park and Rec staff, to get us to this point. And it's a learning curve. I think they might say halfway through that learning curve. They've done a lot of great extra work the last couple days in particular, as well as the many months before that, but it's kind of come to a head lately, as well as our other city departments, light and power, engineering. Just it was a very street department and team effort to get it to this point. So just a thanks to all the extra work that those employees have done to help make this successful, as well as to get this event, this facility opened on time to meet the community pledge that we had made. So hats off to the staff for the wonderful job that they've done. And then just a quick reminder, I think Labor and Finance Committee, we're going to have a quick meeting after this meeting.
Thank you, John. I would just notify the TV station in Sioux Falls, we weren't out of a pool for 2 years, more like 2 weeks. But anyway, any comments or questions for John? Rich?
John, do you happen to know, was that a record attendance for the first day?
For this pool, yes. I can say that. So that was, I'm sorry, but no, I will say the numbers that we're seeing right now, and granted it's new and people want to come and see it, we're experiencing higher numbers now than we were in some of our days last year. I wouldn't say this is the exact number, but I believe we had about 700 people that passed through the doors on Saturday. Sunday was equally high. I think this afternoon, which was our first, if you will, week time swim, we had numbers, I shouldn't give it because I'm not exactly sure, but we had numbers that exceeded well beyond, I know what I'm looking for, Sunday night swim, which is usually that, post-dinner time, if you will, the 5 to 8. We had over 300 people last night. We don't see that sort of number with our old pool for that particular swim time. So we're seeing very strong numbers with it. We appreciate the public's patience as we work out things. There are little things that we're tweaking and adjusting. Parking is certainly one that's at a premium right now around there. We appreciate patience with that as we will construct the parking lot to better serve it next year. But long-winded answer to your question, but yes, we're experiencing very strong numbers there. We're very proud of right now.
Tom, please.
I also heard very good feedback from little kids who have really been waiting for this, and they're very, very happy about it. I heard one comment from someone who's a lap swimmer, and they wish it were twice as long and not shorter. But the other question I received was, is there a place on the city website somewhere or the pool park and rec website where there's a policy listed for weather? I was a little worried myself. First day there was thunder and rain, but I don't believe we closed.
Yeah, they did.
And
Yeah, they did.
Did they for a short time and then reopen? Okay. Anyway, someone asked me about the weather and thunder policy.
I know we did last week sort of a frequently asked question document. We tried to put together some information. As it's a new venture for our community, just, what's it cost? What are the hours? Different things. Can I bring floaties? That sort of thing we tried to answer. I don't believe the weather policy was listed on there, but that's something we can certainly look at. My sense of it is that it hasn't really changed from what past pool practices were, if there's lightning, those sorts of things.
Well, all in all, congratulations to the citizens of Vermillion for funding this, and to everyone involved in building it and operating it, and this is a real success and something really to be proud of, so thank you.
Time to stump Mike with invoices payable. Any questions for Mike?
I just got to ask about golf sand. Does this mean people are in the trap more, or has that fluctuated?
Some of it's used on the greens, isn't it?
$800 and something for golf sand. Is that normal?
They get it in loads and will address the bunkers each year, working to get them refilled. They do. When you excavate the ball out, sometimes sand comes with it. Depending on how deep you excavate, how much sand needs to be replaced.
We don't vacuum it up and put it back or something?
No.
Just kidding. It just was a curiosity.
Any other comments or questions for Mike?
Move to pay our bills. Second.
Motion and second to pay our bills. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 12, consensus agenda. Set a public hearing date of June 19, 2017 for a retail on-off sale malt beverage license for the Vermillion Downtown Cultural Association for Coyote Twin at 10 East Main. Item B, set a public hearing date of June 19, 2017 for a special daily malt beverage and wine license for the Vermillion Area Arts Council on or about July 8, 2017 at 202 Washington Street.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consensus agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries, Steve. Motion and second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you all.